It's the track.
Okay, recording the podcast Saturday, May the 30th, JS alongside the Eruditos, Shane Ruthe on the Track Stitch podcast, the number one track and field podcast for former Irish milers aged 37 years of age. Shane Ruthe, long weekend in New Zealand. What's the holiday, by the way?
The King.
What?
The King's, not King James and Charles, the King's birthday weekend. Formerly known as Queen's birthday weekend.
Oh, they've changed. Oh, of course. That's right, because now you guys are governed by the King of England, not the Queen of England.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, always good to get a day off.
Just doesn't matter on who's ted itself.
Exactly. Is that that's the benefit of still being in the Commonwealth, apparently, is that you get King's birthday weekend? Nice. Shano, lots to talk about today. Some great action over the last couple of weeks and coming up as well, plus a few other topics. Let's kick off going back a week, the LA Track Fest last week. Pretty good meet. I sat down and watched as much of as I possibly could before FlowTrack switched off their free YouTube stream. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to negotiate a reciprocal viewing partnership with FlowTrack yet. We'll get onto that one, but probably the biggest race of the meet was the men's 800 meters. I know that was one that we were both really looking forward to. Interesting result there, Shano. Not so much because of the winning time, 143. No, it was 144 low, but more because of this sort of season debut of two 800 meter veterans in Donovan Brazier and Bryce Hoppel, and two 1500 meter veterans in Jake Whiteman and Josh Kerr. What do you think about the result here? Good PR for Josh Kerr. He ran 144.60, and the two 800 guys actually finished behind the two 1500 guys. What does that mean for them moving forwards? Is that encouraging for those guys? I think it's just good to have a bit of a breakdown and a chat over that men's 800.
Well, this is theft of your intellectual property here, Jason, but you said to me that that result for the two 800 guys, it doesn't reveal a lot. I mean, they could go to either 142 or 143 or 146, 147 from that performance.
Yeah.
I thought about it a little bit since, so I don't think it's terrible for the 800 guys. I remember as a more pure 800 type myself that you struggle sometimes early on, right, when you're a more 800 type, because you're not running off just your aerobic, like the strength type work. And so it sometimes takes like 4 to 6 races to get to the point where you're really shut. Now, of course, counting against that logic is the fact these guys seem to be pretty primed all year round now. But perhaps given it's an off year, perhaps some of these athletes have decided to go back to the drawing board and do a lot more of that type of work, knowing that they've got world champs not for 15, 16 months, and also not don't have the Olympics for a couple of years. So maybe those guys are back doing the mahi, as we say in New Zealand, doing the hard work, working on things that should have a better long-term projection. So I don't think it's terrible for the 800 guys, and I think the 1500 guys are running more off that type of aerobic profile anyway, so they're probably better able to translate into a performance which approximates their best most of the time, because they're not doing all that speed work which taps into that anaerobic ability of the 800 guys anyway.
Totally. Yeah, I thought about that too, and that's a great point that you raise. I'm like, on the first glance, I was like, it's a bit of a surprising result. I'll give you my perspective in a second, but then I actually came around to what you just said there. I'm like, yes, and coming from someone who also was like yourself, more a predominant 800 guy, it does take a few more races under your belt to get better. And I could see how, particularly with the way the guys train these days, it would make more sense that the 1500 guys are kind of closer to their best earlier, or it's easier for them to get close to their best. Going through the runners, I think like Hoppel's result to me, I just think Bryce Hoppel is probably, I mean, I don't think there's a hot take to say he's sort of on the back end of his career now. He's been so good for so long. We forget that he was he medalist in Doha 2019? I think he was, right? He got a bronze, or he was definitely in the final. He may not have been a medalist, but he was definitely in the final. So at extremely high world level, all the way back in 2019, obviously reached his peak probably that fourth place in the Olympic Games where he broke 142. Hoppel's really, for me, I think he's had a great run. The interesting guy for me was Brazier. Now, a lot of people would say, but hold on a second, Brazier in his first race last year, remember there was his comeback race, he ran like just under 145, and he's done the same here, so he's about in the same place, and he went on to run 142. I do think, though, the circumstances are a little bit different. First of all, the fact that last year was this big comeback from almost 3.5 years out of running. And the other thing, too, is very, very different races, because last year, of course, he won that comeback race by quite a lot. And he was also able to run it in a way where, he was very, very free down the back straight. I remember watching it, just looked so powerful and strong, and it just didn't quite look the same in that race in LA. And I think there were a few little just eye test differences, because you can't make any distinction on the time. I just felt like maybe to the eye just didn't quite look as promising. And then I thought to myself, like, it will be interesting, because coming back off injury, we have seen it before. We saw it with Keely, even on a shorter term basis last year when she'd had that injury. She came into Silesia, the Diamond League there, and ran like 154 first race back, and people were like, oh my God. I don't know with Brazier. I'm not overly bullish on him after that race, to be honest. I thought he would have a little bit more juice and a bit more power left in the tank, but completely understandable if he doesn't,
Yeah, it's just hard to know. I agree.
It is hard to know. And on the for the 1500 guys, likewise with Whiteman, I don't know. I just feel like I see Whiteman as even more advanced in his career than Josh Kerr. So I didn't look too much into that. But I thought the result for Josh Kerr was interesting, and it was good. And honestly, I think a lot of people were saying, hey, this now is really pointing towards this world mile record, 144.60. Was that your opinion on that one? Like, do you really think that reveals that much? Or is that kind of like where Josh Kerr actually should be or should always have been?
It reminds me a little bit of Nordin Morsali. I remember as a very fanatical young track and field fan, being surprised. I remember he ran 144.89. I think the year he broke the world record in either the mile or the 1500, and being a bit surprised how far back that was, say, from Sebastian Coe. Not understanding, of course, how much more Morsali is the 15.35K guy. I think Zach Coe was.
Yeah. World record holder in the 3, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know. Like, one thing I'll say, I don't think he's ever really targeted just running fast. He's always targeted. So maybe he knows things that other, and I think because he's got that tendency to rub people up the wrong way with the slightly sort of goofy, over the top social media presence,
braggadociousness.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, the guy is an absolute rock star. He's unbelievably good. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, but for Cole Hocker's, just
moment of inspiration.
Yeah, fistful of steel bursting through, sort of superhuman, probably sub 3 second last 50 meters at that Olympics, would be the Olympic champion. And he did everything he could to prepare to beat Jakob. And that was the project. And he lost to a guy who was extraordinary on the day. So he very easily could be the Olympic champion. Coming out and doing that, that 2 mile the way he did, that World Indoor 3K the way he did, and the 2 mile record, and the way he just destroyed some of those other top guys over that distance. And now you've got him running 144.6. He's faster than Morsali was over 3K. So I wouldn't ever discount Josh Kerr. That's all I'll say. I think it's easy to say, oh, he's a long way off. And you know what? That whole shoot for the stars, and if you fail, I mean, if he came out and he ran 344.5 or 343.8, it's not really a failure, is it? It's a pretty good project in a non-championship year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, First thing on Josh Kerr, I would say I'm actually pleasantly or happily surprised for him because at his age, I mean, I believe he's either 27 now or turning 28 this year. This is it's quite an advanced age to be running close to your career's best. Now we don't know if he's actually at his career's best level because that was a 3:27.7 1500 meters, which is still I think the sixth fastest performance ever run. It's when you are under 3:28 and you are on the podium in Olympic Games and a world champion, you are in the top echelon of the history of the event. So I'm surprised that he's at this level. I would say this though, Shane, I'm not overly surprised at 144.60, particularly when I look back at guys like Matthew Centrovitz and Craig Engels, who were mid 144 guys themselves. I think that, funnily enough, I think that Hisham El Garouj only having this reported 1500 meter PR of 147, which clearly is nonsense because he ran faster than that in the final 800 of the Olympic 15 in 04. I think that's kind of, and also Jakob's alleged PR of 146. I think that's kind of put a little bit of a tint on what we think these guys or what these guys are actually capable over 2 laps. And I think probably Josh Kerr.
Hisham one is absolute nonsense because in Seville, I was 7th form at the time, at the peak of my sort of just exalted following of athletics. And, I never forget, it was at Peter Matthews commentating in a semi-final, right? And he literally walked the last 80 meters of a semi, and I remember him being like, was it a semi or was it possibly even
semi? I think
but he ran 3:35.6 in his heat, and that was back when that actually meant something,
right?
And he jogged. But I remember, was it I think it was the heat, Jason?
Was it?
Yeah, and Peter Matthews goes, he ran his last 400 meters in 52.7 and his last 700 meters in 146 pace. Yeah, it was a crock.
Exactly. But the point is, I think that Josh Kerr was probably at his best in that 3:27 shape. If he'd run an 800 the day after or a few days after that Olympic final, he's probably a 144 flat guy. Like, you just have to be that fast. You have to have that much power to run that quick over 1500. So I really see this as putting him on par. I don't know, again, if it points to a world record over the mile, but like you said, if he goes out there and runs in a targeted race, God, even if he broke 3:45, Shane, it puts him. How many athletes in history have ever broken 3:45 for the mile? Them all.
3 or 4.
Yeah, exactly. We've got LG, Noah Nguyen, Jared Naguse, and Jakob Ingebrigtsen. I think those are the only guys.
Did you say 3:44?
Yeah, how many have broken 3:45? Sorry, so run in the 3:44s and change. Well. And Nuruddin Morsa, of course. Sorry. So this would put him along. Once again, he's just solidifying his spot in the top echelon. But I guess I'd say I don't subscribe to maybe the narrative that this puts him odds-on favourite to run under 3:43, but I do believe that this shows he's in really, really good shape and trending well to have a great performance in that particular race.
I mean, you never know. They're using so much more 3K, 2K, 3K, 5K ability now in terms of the way they train. You never know. There's 800s. It's like a totally different event now. You don't see the 800, 1500 type much anymore.
Well, you mentioned Morselli, right? Like Morselli was a one, in the same ballpark as 144.6 and probably was faster, and also 725 flat, which is about what Josh Kerr is. And Morselli was like a 3. What did he run? What was his world record? 3:44,
3:9.
3:9 exactly. So
I don't know as well though. Like, you've showed us on our chat that all the ages of these guys at their peak, but I think it's the sort of LeBron James phenomenon of these people and I talked to Nick Willis about it once, about, how he was able to have such a long career. He said a lot of these guys pre the professional era, early professional era, that athletics was a focus in their early to mid 20s, and they went off and did other things, and with the money there and the training and all the different ways of supporting and recovering, I think these peaks, I think you were going to see them
extending. Yeah.
I tell you what, Jake Whiteman, with all a little bit like Willis in the sense that he missed a lot of time from injury, and that can be a helpful thing. It was for Nick. You compare him to, say, Craig Mottram, his peer, and say 05. And Jake Whiteman, despite quote, only being a 329 guy,
Yeah.
ran, was it 143.6,
143.6,
Yeah. And I mean, if he can, last year, he was a, bastardized version of his peak shape, and he still almost won the world champs.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't write Jake Whiteman off in the world champs or the Olympics the next few years. If he can stay healthy and with that sort of pure 815 type profile he's got, and if he can stay in the hunt aerobically and not get hurt, I think why couldn't he win another title? He's awesome.
Yeah, no,
Because
he is.
he bet a better version of Jakob than anyone else. He was the first guy to, yeah.
Maybe. Yes, I think that his Kerr beating Jakob in 2023 was also pretty good. I think Jakob was in good shape that year, but I agree with you. I think you're splitting hairs on that one. And I do agree that
he did it first, though. He did, but this is when he was still the Olympic champion. Right? Yeah, and it was like Jan Ulrich in '97 when he won that tour and went past Bjarne Riis and sort of awkwardly accepted, the command to usurp Bjarne Riis and go ahead on that climb. Is it to Morzine and become the guy, the next sort of Indurain or Eddie Merckx, and so to come over the top of him the way Lance did in '99, but the way that Jake Whiteman did when he was. Right. He still had that perception of that impenetrable shield of this is going to be the guy, and we all thought that, and then to beat him like that. So yeah, you can make arguments either way, but I still think, put it this way, he beat him in a situation where it was completely unexpected. So he set the prototype for Kerr to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, great
I just think that with Whiteman, where he's at now with that race, is probably a long way ahead of where he was when he was getting beaten by, let's be honest, sort of journeyman type guys in Australia, like in the early 25, to go on from there to run the world, win the world champs. He's got a serious toolkit, Jake Whiteman.
Yeah. No, he does. And yeah, I mean, almost lost in amongst all of that was Brandon Miller front running 144.4. So it's a great result for him too. Interesting race though, that the field let him really get so far away, but that was impressive for Miller because he went through in like 50.4, which is right on about what a lot of these top guys want to go through the first lap in an 800 now at any level, right? We've definitely seen a change. We're trending away from like that 49 flat target to more that 50 flat target. So I thought that was a good win for him. So yeah, just a super, as we predicted, Shano, a super interesting 800 with tons of narratives going on there. Implications for Josh Kerr heading in towards this world mile record attempt. How this old guard of 800 meter American studs, Brazier and Hopper, were going to fare. Jake Whiteman thrown in there. And speaking of 800 meter runners, there was a performance from another very good 800 meter runner, sort of under the spotlight in the men's C 1500 meters. Cooper Lutkenhaus. Shano, I have to fess up. I was clearly, we don't have to because it was recorded last week. I was way off the mark here on Cooper Lutkenhaus, and as you often say, sometimes I'm more the bearish of us two on the predictions. I was extremely bullish for Cooper Lutkenhaus here. It was either going to go one or two ways. It was either going to kind of trend in the way that I had hypothesized, which was he would be able to maybe go through 1200 and say 256, 257, and then rip off a big last 300 using his clearly awesome anaerobic capacity and power as a 142.2 800 meter runner, and run something similar to what we saw Donovan Brazier run all the way back in 2021, or it was going to go the other way, which I think you were closer to predicting. But 345.10 for Lutkenhaus. Does it mean that he's never going to have a potential over 1500? To be honest, I kind of think it does, because I would expect that as a 142.2 runner, if you did have some kind of chops in your future over 1500, you're probably going to be better than this. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, but I think that's not the important narrative here. I think it's enormously encouraging for his 800 meter, his ceiling in the 800. Because if you're only at that point in the 1500 in your journey, and you need to be better than that to run, world record. You've got a guy who can. So who's the Kenyan guy at the moment? Wanyonyi, who's sort of 10, 12, 13 seconds quicker. And if you're only at that level in your development, and this means he's not an overdeveloped. He's not an overtrained specimen in terms of his eventual ceiling. So you've got a guy whose aerobic profile sits pretty modestly at a 345, 1500 in terms of a measure of VO2 max and how much that aerobic profile has been trained.
Yeah.
God, that's exciting. I remember when Nick Willis ran like 9 minutes for 3K the same summer, he ran like 148 for 800. I mean, that was the biggest giveaway that he was, or maybe it was a bit quicker than that, but it wasn't 8 flat or 750. No. So then you knew then that as soon as he developed that, and a year later or maybe less, he ran 744 for 3K.
Yeah.
The Nick Willis was 85th in the National Secondary Schools cross country in sixth form. So it's sort of a bit of that going on here. You go, okay, so he hasn't been trained to death. And you know what, as well, it's a bit unfair because I don't think you were totally off, Jason, because some people, it doesn't matter how good you are, whether you're a 142, 800 runner or not, some people adjust to new stimulus very differently. So he just may be someone that, because he doesn't ever run it, he was sort of goofing around, like not as in not trying, but sort of like, 58, what does that mean? And sort of, botched it. It may be that if he wouldn't do this because this isn't the project for Cooper Lutkenhaus to go out and run 3 or 4 more in the next 3 or 4 months, he'd probably run 338 or 340. You know yourself, you were capable of, you run 342, you should have run quicker. If you'd had focused on it, you definitely would have run quicker.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you'd turn up and run 345, 346 in New Zealand in your off season. So I think it's sort of analogous to that. I don't think it's anything to be like, oh God, he's, because he's a pure 800 type anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also as well, you can't forget he's only 17 years of age. So running 345 at the age of 17 is still on its own pretty awesome. I mean, we can certainly remember, Nick, how old was Nick when he ran his 401 mile in Wanganui? Yeah, exactly. And that's a little bit quicker than this performance from Lutkenhaus, but obviously Nick was a 1500 meter runner, and all due respect to him, he didn't have a 142.2 and a world title in the 800 meters under his belt at that point. So yeah, when I'm saying that, I'm talking about his elite future. I don't think we're going to ever see Cooper Lutkenhaus,
doesn't have the right gait for it.
Exactly. Yeah, and you say this, it's the same with Keely Hodgkinson over 1500, right? Just pure 8.
Yeah, the same thing that allows them to be great over 800 is prohibitive to being great over 1500. They kind of lumber a bit. Even in the first lap, both Lutkenhaus and Keely at their respective paces, if the pace isn't on like a heats or a semi and world champs, they don't look that fluid. Whereas you've got like an 8:15 type, like a Laura Muir running the first lap next to Keely if they're running 60 because it's a heat or a semi. And not that anything goes out that slow anymore, but when it did, Laura Muir's loping along so elegantly, whereas Keely's sort of almost stuttering a little bit. So, or Georgia Hunterbell next to Keely when they're running 60. Georgia Hunterbell's a 1500 meter runner, or 8:15 runner, and she just cruises along, whereas Keely's sort of almost stumbling. And Cooper Lutkenhaus is exactly the same. He's not a Ovet or a Coe. He's a 8:15. He's like a Juan Torreno type guy.
Yeah, or the comparison I just had in my mind was Rudisha, because Rudisha
looked a better one. Right.
Yes, yep. He's very, very good over 400. His potential will probably be to be a sub 46 400 guy or a 45 mid guy. Extremely good over 800. And to be honest, David Rudisha probably could have run somewhere around 345, in between like 340 and 345, just based off strength and speed and anaerobic power at his absolute peak too. But Rudisha was the same too. He was awesome looking at sub 50 speed or low 50s, and a couple of those races where the pace was off and he wasn't able to extend his stride, he did incredibly to say that the world record hold actually looked a little bit awkward running an 800, but he did. And that's the same as, like you said, Juan Torreno was another guy like him, and Lutkenhaus.
Because you've got these guys that are very, very fast over 400 and probably even respectable at like a club or national, not in the US, but in most countries over, say, 200, they could line up and not embarrass themselves. So that and then their aerobic profile just stretches far enough to get
Right.
to the 800, which makes them be able to break world records and run 142 as 16-year-olds, because it allows them to utilize that speed for a duration of a minute 40 odd. But to make the point another way, I don't even think Rudisha or Lutkenhaus would be that great over 1,000. Yeah, and 1,000, 1,500 watts, 50% longer than 1,000. So it's a big difference for those guys.
No, I agree, because I always felt that the 1,000 meters was the realm of the 1,500 meter runner, even though it numerically seems like it would be more the realm of the 800 because it's closer. But when you actually look at that top, that top world list, starting at Noah Nguyen, 1,500 meter champion, 3:28.3 back in the 90s. Sebastian Coe, obviously world record holder in the mile, sub 3:30, 1,500 meter runner. Steve Cram, world mile record holder. It is more of that, I
remember watching
the 8:15 guys than the
Willis run
4:8s.
a 4x4 at the Nationals one year, and there was rumors because people love to do the old hand timer. You're chatting to your mate, and the gun goes. But like people were saying, he'd run a 49 leg or something, and I could run a 49 leg with a very generous timing and a 400. Nick, I remember he was like 49, and he was a 3:31 or 3:30 runner by then. I remember thinking to myself, that's quite poor for a guy who's a 145, 800 meter runner. Yeah. But it'll be the same with, but the point is that's gone way out of where their prowess lies in terms of rage. Like, for example, Jakob would be embarrassing over 400 against the top 400 guys. It'll be horrific. But yet he can run
guys,
no, at the top, if Jakob turned up to a diamond league in the 400.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
It'd be embarrassing, but it's no different to say Lutkenhaus running over 1,500 or dare I say 2 or 3K. It's like their limit, if you flip it around, their range stops the other way.
Right. Yeah. Well, sticking to the 800, sort of, moving forwards, Rabat is on tonight, Shano, and I guess the most interesting race here, sticking on the men's side, is Emmanuel Wanyoni. We just mentioned him in his 1,500 meter prowess. This surely has got to be the year that if this world record, and we have spoken a little bit about this mark and if it's going to go down, and we love hypothesizing and coming up with theories on it, but this is his season debut. This has to be the year that Wanyoni's going to do it. He cannot keep running at a high level forever. When we look back historically at the last two world record holders, David Rudisha, Wilson Kipketer, Wilson had 2 years really where his window was open to really go after it, end of 96 and then 97. Then, of course, he had the illness, never really came back in the same shape. And David Rudisha as well, even though David had a very long career, obviously going all the way through to 2016 where he won the gold medal, still ran 142. He never actually ran under 142 again after that Olympic final in 2012. So that means his kind of peak window was 2010, where he first broke the world record, 11 and 12. And Emmanuel Wanyoni, I think it's fair to say, is probably right at the end of his. So this is going to be an interesting one to see, like, where his shape is. Of course, last year we saw him running in Grand Slam track, where he had a little bit of success, quite a lot of success, winning that 1,500 meters in Kingston. He ran then of course over the 800. This year he opened up with a win in kind of a slower race over 1,500 in Nairobi. But Shano, do you agree that this is probably the year where if this 800 meter mark is going to be broken by this current crop of athletes, this has got to be it, especially in a non-championship year?
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
I think, like I said about talking about the 1,500 guys, I think we're tainted by a historical view of how young people need to be. I think the way they train, I think things have just changed. I don't have a lot of empirical research for that, so it's sort of like the famous New Zealand Australian movie, The Castle. It's the vibe, it's Marbo. I think the prevailing vibe or feeling of the athletes and what's going on in a season is more important than, say, someone's longevity window in terms of the thing. I think, well, they're both important. I don't think this year, my feeling of the vibe of this year, I think it's going to be more like a traditional early 2000s off year. These guys have been running major championships and pumping out times every year since COVID. And my feeling is that as a group, they're just not going to be elevated enough for someone like Wanyoni to jump from that vibe of the group and run the record.
Well, that would be my counter case or my point as to why it wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
is that it's just you. That's a great point, and I love this discussion. Is that these guys have been running so fast for so long, but they just haven't quite been able to crest that
then
mountain.
We agree then, because I slightly misunderstood what you were saying.
Oh no! I just feel that I still believe that kind of that. You're right. Guys are running much deeper into their careers at a high level, but when I'm talking about obviously career peak window, I'm talking about those years at which you really have that potential at your absolute best. Now that doesn't mean that Emmanuel Wanyoni won't go to the World Championships next year and win and maybe run 142, because David Rudisha did the same thing. He was still excellent after he won a world title and an Olympic title after the world record in London. But I think it is more difficult than people think to maintain this top level. You hear it all the time with Jakob, he's going to come back, he's going to do this, and if he gets fit again, it's like, I don't quite think it's that simple, and that's just my gut feeling that if this current crop is going to get after it, when I mean current crop, it's like Wanyoni, Marco Arop, Jamil Sajadi, I guess you could throw in Bryce Hoppel into that mix. He's, who's the other guy? No, he's not going to do it, is he? Gabriel Tuel, the French guy. I feel like those are the guys that have been, in terms of running fast times, right at the top of the list last couple of years. I just feel like if it's not going to happen this year for those guys, it's probably not going to happen.
I don't think this current crop's going to do it. I mean, it'd be, I think if they did, they'll nip it. But I do think in the next 5 years, I know that's a long time.
Yeah.
I think someone is going to come through with how popular athletics is now, and running in general, and the general populace run clubs, and the real fitness buzz pervades the Western culture at the moment. And I think you're going to have someone come through in the next 3 to 5 years who's got the ability to run 140.2 or something like that. When you've got a Rudisha or a Kipketer type talent coming through with all these incredible kids, you got Lutkenhaus running like 142.2. Maybe it'll be Lutkenhaus. Who knows?
Yeah. No, totally.
God, and comes through, and in the current with Wavelight and with training, nutrition, and all the built up knowledge that coaches and managers and the whole circuit has about how to produce these top results. Your Rudisha or your Kipketer of yesteryear in someone's body now, with all of the factors we just discussed, probably can shave half a second off his record. In fact, I'm sure they can. Yep.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I think with respect to Emmanuel, I just think this is him specifically. I think this has got to be the year for him, or else, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, the guy's like world champion and Olympic champion. He's done incredibly well in his career, but with respect to that world record. So I think it's going to be an interesting one to see how he starts off the season. Again, sometimes the times aren't overly relevant, especially first race up for the 800 guys. I'm just interested to see, try and pick up on some small things, how he actually looks in terms of his fitness, what kind of power, is he able to make the moves that it's clear that he's trying to make, and that'll give us a good indication.
One other thing
for this year.
Militating against Wanyoni and Wanyoni breaking the world record is actually something which is arguably his greatest attribute. Is he's a real winner. He's a championship racer. I mean, taking down those guys over 1,500, and he really knows how to dig in and feel that guy at his shoulder and get past him. And he's won a lot of races, obviously the big races, but he's really tough. He's never been a guy I've seen with that's, as good at chasing the clock.
Yeah, you're right, because actually all his best times have come in
those races
and in championship races. And even when he ran, did he run a second? No, it is his PR Lausanne in 2024 after the Olympics. That was that big head-to-head battle with Arop, that really crazy race where Arop nearly tripped over the pacemaker at 450 and then he kind of led him through. But yeah, I agree with you. And that's that point too about breaking the 800 meter world record. just for both the men and the women. It's almost like competitive races are anti that, because anytime you've got to spend any energy, whether it's emotional or physical, holding guys off in the 800 meters, and you're running on such tight margins when you're going after a time like 141 flat or 140.91 world record, you just can't waste any energy. And so that's always kind of been the interesting thing. And so I'd be interested to see if Wanyonyi actually tries to set up in a smaller race this year. If we see him on a start list and maybe like an Ostrava, and it's kind of a big race, but maybe without some of his current top protagonists or contemporaries against him, to me, that would signal that he's really going for the world record. So we'll see if that happens. But all exciting, Shano. Heading into another topic, we haven't done one for a while. I don't know if this counts as an official fire up corner. Stu Kerr will be chomping at the bit because he loves the fire up. So we won't officially call it that, Deo, but the enhanced games happened last Sunday, came out of the blue. We've been hearing about it for a while, not a lot of build up into it, and all of a sudden it was here on the weekend and it was on. Should we comment on the enhanced games? I want to hear your take on what you saw, what you thought about this event, because just off the bat, one of the most bizarre sporting events I think I've ever witnessed. Highlighted, I guess, by our buddy Fred Curley, winning the enhanced games 100 meters in 9.97 in the final. He ran 9.95 in the heats. But Deo, I'm just going to hand this over to you. What did you think about this event? What does this mean for the sport of track and field? And we'll talk about a narrative maybe coming out of it after. But Deo, shoot.
What's enhanced about it? I don't really get it.
Yeah. Allegedly, or supposedly, the guys had a set list of performance-enhancing substance, and that's another key point to make clear, is that they weren't just allowed to take anything. So they weren't just allowed to shoot themselves up with formaldehyde and see if that worked, or horse tranquilizer or anything like that. And this is where the event's just so bizarre, because it was almost like a weird marketing event for a nutritional company that was just exploiting kind of old, washed up or financially desperate athletes. So, yeah, what was enhanced about it? I don't actually know.
Here's a question for you. Do you think anyone that was clean during their career would go and run in the enhanced games?
No.
So it doesn't mean logically that everyone that's in them now was dirty during their career.
No, of course not.
However, I mean, given no one that was definitely clean would go and tarnish their legacy by running in the enhanced games, only people that perhaps did cheat during their career would now run in the enhanced games. And because they're now older and flamed out, they can't run any faster than they ran when they were running in clean competitions. And worse than that, they're saying they're clean, because the ultimate human conceit. It's like no one wants to see, you go watch Formula One if you want to see how fast something can go, or watch Elon's rockets. But watching Fred run up the track was, in a dirty event where you're allowed to cheat, saying, I still don't cheat, and running way slower than he did when he was clean. It's just a mind fuck. And in terms of what to think about it, and my response is I don't think about it, because it's nonsense. It's not the first time that this has been trumpeted. You go to the pub back in my boozing days and they should let them all take drugs. It's just like they all probably do take drugs, mate.
I don't, Shane, you've known me for a number of years now, and I think it's fair to say you'd probably concede I'm a lot less fired up than I was in my younger days. And I don't tend to get like overly wound up about things as much as I did in the past, particularly in terms of commenting and having opinions and stuff. But I have to say there were moments during this broadcast where I was just apoplectic about what I was listening to. I mean, it was such fucking nonsense. It was unbelievable. Like listening to these guys, this guy, Emmanuel Acho, you're probably not familiar with him. He's sort of a reasonably well-known talking head here in the US. He's on The Bachelor or some
like
shitty...
us, but we're not reasonably well-known.
Yeah, exactly. We also weren't on The Bachelor on some awful, shitty reality TV show. I mean, this guy sitting there talking about how, Fred Curley at his best was a 9.76 runner, so we're right on these tight margins, and could the world record go down? Like, with clearly no knowledge of just how far away this world record from Usain Bolt is to anybody else that's ever run in history, let alone Fred Curley at his best 9.76, to this bizarre CEO of the Enhanced Games, this German Gronkster who came out, who honestly I thought he was like an AI superimposed AI figure on the screen. He was so weird. And then just the whole package, like listening to these guys talking about, that we could see national records go down. We're not seeing national records go down. Like it was the ultimate. I hate to say this, but it was the most American event possible in terms of just, we're living in this world where we're fed bullshit all the time by politicians and everyone's acutely aware of it. And now it's infiltrated itself into sports. And I think that's what got me fired up, Deo. And then, I mean, the cherry on the sundae was also this dude who's one of the, in this big elite race, gets down the blocks, his shoelaces untied. His name's like Mike White or Mike Smith or something like that, from Germany. Apparently ran in the NCAA last year. He's 32 years old or 33 years old, gets down to the blocks, his shoelaces untied. It was just a gong show. And then I think the thing that, again, really got to me was just how it was abundantly clear that this whole thing was just like a marketing exercise for these tainted nutritional supplements that they're trying to sell. And the payoff, or kind of like the marketing expenditure, was exploiting these athletes with quite a lot, I mean, not quite a lot of money. It is incredibly high amount of money, more money that's ever been seen in the sport of track and field for a performance. And the offshoot is these guys will never run again in a legitimate competition, even if they wanted to. So I thought it was just tragic.
Yeah, I mean, it just bores me to tears, the whole thing, though, because it's an insult to people's intelligence.
Yeah, wow.
That it could be of remote interest as a spectacle, because the start point has to be that what you are seeing over the last century in track, cycling, or any event, any sporting endeavor that lends itself to enhancement from drugs, wasn't enhanced by drugs.
Right.
And I'm not telling any tales out of school here, through track, cycling, weightlifting, swimming, that American pro sports, that a lot of these athletes have been caught over the years, or strongly implicated in a way you'd say in a court of law, be beyond reasonable doubt, that they use performance-enhancing drugs. The Tour de France, you can go and read for years about the history in that event, and sprinting in the Olympics. You can read the stuff from the 80s, the 90s, like Balco. So you have to find this interesting. You have to believe that there wasn't a predominant force of drugs in those sports. And I don't believe that there wasn't. So to me, allowing people, or having an event which is predicated on the fact that you can take drugs, implies you couldn't before. And then people are like struggling to wrap their head around the fact that these guys aren't any better. I mean, drugs don't turn cart horses into thoroughbreds.
No. And they don't even if
the stars of men's sprinting of yesteryear today in cycling, even if these guys are taking drugs, it doesn't mean that the guy who was 202nd, who wasn't taking drugs, takes them, and all of a sudden he's a winner. It just doesn't work like that. And that's the real shame about, and the real irony about drugs, is that because it's been so commonplace, it doesn't really change the real order of who's the best athlete.
So here's a question then, because this is a classic narrative to come out of it too. Does this sort of, without being too controversial or casting too much dispersion, does this sort of expose the world record of 9.58 of Usain Bolt? I guess on the surface you could easily say, well, it does, because these guys were maybe not doing things ethically and were still so far away. But the crazy thing is that the event was just so bad, right? And all these guys were just so bad. I mean, Fred Curley's the only world-class athlete in there, and he ran 9.95. It doesn't even sort of cast any dispersion on that world record of Bolt, because these dudes are just all washed up nobodies anyway. Like, the field just sucked. The whole thing was just so poorly done, and or does it? It doesn't, right?
Well, if you want to, which we do, Jason, avoid a defamation suit. The main defense of defamation suit is pleading truth. So, without saying Usain Bolt was using drugs, we can say that a couple, and it's a long time since I've looked into this, of his teammates, prominent teammates, were caught over the years, right? And then we'll stop there with anything to do with Bolt, because I've never heard anything beyond that. Okay, but then you look at the people that have run quicker. The people who have run the other top 10 times in history. You go on Google, the old Googleometer, and you plug in the men's top 50 all time or whatever, and there's a great image. If you click on images, it's got a red line through everyone that's ever got close to that record, and every one of them has been caught for drugs or heavily implicated. People like Tyson Gay, Justin Gatlin, all of those times. It's an extraordinary graphic. Johan Blake, all red line, everyone. So it's a bit like when Armstrong was, and they were after him, and they said, well, it's not that plausible that everyone else on that podium those 7 years has been either caught or heavily implicated. We're supposed to believe this guy hasn't been taking drugs. It's very similar. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. You can't say, oh yes, but
yeah, I know. Yep. Either way, I thought this was kind of like, in terms of like sporting events or something related to do with sports, it's one of the weirdest things. In reflection, it was one of the most tragic things. I just thought the whole thing was a shits, and I hope I never.
Who was the coach at Arkansas? The distance running coach, was it O'Connell or O'Donnell?
O'Donnell, yeah.
O'Donnell. So they asked O'Donnell who was the greatest athlete he'd ever seen in the flesh performing, and he said Tyson Gay was the best athlete I have ever seen. He was absolutely phenomenal. I went and watched a few months ago that 9.58, and Gay, when he's run 9.69 in that, his run, I see what he meant. His running, the start, the technicality, he's not the same specimen Usain was. It's freakish how perfect that guy's action was. He got caught using drugs. I mean, the great shame of it is if none of these guys ever took any drugs, I think Tyson Gay probably would have been at the same level, or perhaps he would have been the champion. That's the shame of it all. Tyson Gay was a great athlete without drugs.
Yeah. All right, Shane, enough of the enhanced games. We don't need to enhance the podcast anymore with that chat. Just hope I don't see it again. Shane-o.
Jason, what's worse, enhanced games or Grand Slam track? Because you're not a fan of either.
Oh, well, actually, we could also throw Athlos in there too. No, I mean, the enhanced games are by far the worst. Like, at least we got to see good athletes in Grand Slam track. And I mean, do you know what the shame was though too, Shane? I'd say they have a commonality between them. All you could hear throughout the entire broadcast was them talking about the prize money, which I do not understand why, and why there is this tendency to believe that enhances, no pun intended. The quality of the event. Nobody cares about how much money these guys are making. For the average American household that's making, $78,000-$80,000 a year, nobody wants to hear about athletes running in a straight line or shooting a basketball or catching a football and how much freaking money they play for ultimately what are pastimes. And I think that's just where it lost me as well. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about the 200 grand, and it was the same in Grand Slam track about the 100 grand and all this prize money. I'm like, just no, just don't want to hear it. So what's worse? Definitely the enhanced games. God. And the fact it was in Las Vegas, one of our favorite places.
Given you do edit our podcast afterwards, Jason, I think we might have to call that a fire up corner.
Is it?
It wasn't really fired up in the sort of
true
historical context. Yeah, there wasn't like an animated. There weren't too many, but
we'll let Kerr can decide. He's the king of fire.
The arbiter.
He's the fire up arbiter. Shano, in other news close to home, we should talk about this one. Samuel Ruthinator, Ruthe. Some interesting news coming out of the Ruthe corner. Last week we had heard the sad news that the stress fracture that he'd suffered just a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, was going to keep him out of the Commonwealth Games. The good news is, though, it doesn't seem to have derailed his entire season. He's still planning on running in the World Juniors later in the year, which is really good to hear. However, some news in the last couple of days that Sam is not going to go back to, I believe, Tauranga Boys College. Is that where he's at? Or maybe what's Otamoto? Yeah, either way. He's not going to go back there for his final year, Shane, to basically focus on trying to get qualification points to go to the Olympic Games in 2028. This is maybe tied as well into these ridiculously difficult standards that World Athletics have just released for major events. I believe the 1500 meters now is 330.00. I know the 800 meters is 143 flat, which, by the way, fun fact, only 9 athletes in the history of the World Championships have ever run faster than that at the World Championships. And 8 of them were in the final last year in Tokyo. The only other person before them was Donovan Brazier in Doha. But anyway, that is kind of like the connection there. Sam not going to go and finish his final year at high school just to focus on track. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with it. I mean, the Victorian system where they set out the classroom like a factory from, hundreds of years ago to teach people how to think, etc. I'm not a massive fan of like some of the aspects of the schooling system, and I think I think you can be talented in ways that the school system don't marry up very well with. So I don't think leaving school, and I've heard through the grapevine, not that I really bump into many people, but someone told me a few years ago that he's not like a strongly academic type person. Some of the most successful people I know, clients of mine, friends, dropped out of school. My partner, who's a doctor, dropped out of school, also from Tauranga, because she didn't want to do any more and didn't enjoy it. I don't think it matters at all. I think what's more important is what he's doing with his time, how not rushing back, his attitude, all those things. And people drop out of school for a lot less noble reasons. I just smoke dope and go and work at the video store instead of pursuing a career in the professions, then to be the next great miler. I don't think when I heard it, I saw it, I was like, well, it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing at all, and it is tough. The other thing I'll say, there's a lot of pressure on him, etc. Now, and it seems like life is, for these young people, everything's happening a lot earlier than it used to.
Right.
I think it is tough to do everything these days. Everything happens in such a quick window.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's definitely an eye-opening piece of news, and especially for a 17-year-old, he's just turned 17. It's a big deal not to finish school, but not so much in ways that you'd traditionally think. Because I agree with you that just because you finish high school, it doesn't mean anything at all in the world. And like you said, there are so many successful people that have skills which are, manifest in the real world far better than just getting like a school certificate or bursary or whatever the guys are getting these days. Young New Zealanders are getting when they leave high school. The only thing from my side, Shano, is I know this coming from experience. There is so much sort of intrinsic value to having structure and almost like a distraction in your daily life away from a sport as difficult as running in track and field. And I know that was something that I struggled with in trying to kind of live this dream as a professional athlete. And the one difference maybe that I had is I was very much isolated in sort of my career and training, etc. So I had so much time to sit around between training sessions wondering like what went wrong, what went right, how I was going to do things next time, what are my competitors doing, what else could I, And you see this a lot with American collegiate athletes, right? They come out of the structured program of college athletics where they've got things to distract them, like class, like football games, like going out with their friends and these kinds of things. And they do find it difficult to transition into this pro athlete lifestyle. That would be the only thing from my side. But, in knowing Ben and Craig, they've got a great setup there, a lot of support around Sam. Maybe that's not going to be an issue. That was just the only thing that jumped into my head, is just making sure that it's not always like focused 100% on this endeavor of running, because a lot of being a great runner is a mental mind game. And we've talked about this guy on the podcast already, but Nick Willis. It took Nick a number of years post his career at Michigan to really figure out like what to do with his time and how to manage his emotional and mental mindset before it really clicked, sort of when he got into like the 2010s and, after
Sure.
2012, I think London, when he was really successful. He was obviously great in '08 with the medals, but then kind of went through a tough patch and then he figured it out and came back. And so that would be my new comment on that one, but definitely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. I remember when Maya Ramsden left Boston at the Harvard campus and went to, I don't know where they were, but not there with
Boulder.
on. And I thought,
Yeah,
Boulder,
just up the road from the
yeah,
secondary home at the moment.
So, and it didn't work out. I don't know anything about her or her situation, but then I noticed she went back to Boston, same coach, and did what worked for her. She's obviously a really bright young lady and very intellectual and probably enjoys her friends and the intellectual life, and so went back to what works. I don't know anything about Sam Ruthe and what he's like beyond seeing him on the screen. I've never had any motivation to really understand more. I just love watching track and, we love doing this. Yeah. They'll know a lot more about him and his nature and what makes him tick. And perhaps school wasn't actually, because think about this. If you have a kid, I have a stepson now, and if they're not interested in going to school other than to sit and, eat their lunch with their mates, and if they can find another way to get that community and make them and give them, enough faith in what they're doing and where their life's going, then where they actually are in terms of whether it's school or not school, it's fine. But I do agree with you to the extent that you need to have enough community around you so your day-to-day living isn't like white-knuckled just in pursuit of a task. But it looks like they've got a great community there with, Ben and Jess and all of these people around them and Craig. And it, I would like to think they have fun doing all that as a project, his career. And as long as he's having fun and as long as he wants to do that, then who cares? So many people are like, can jump up and, oh, this is ridiculous or whatever, but you need to think a little bit more about what's actually going on in the specific person's life before you judge it. Yeah.
The other person I thought about when you brought up Maya Ramsden was Parker Velby, of course. Velby at University of Florida. She went up to Boston to train with the New Balance elite group there, Mark Coogan. Very big change in atmosphere, scenery, weather, focus, and it just didn't work out. She made the change, left the group, went back down to, I believe, her former coach, or at least back into a more familiar environment. And then, of course, saw her run incredibly well last week at the LA Track Fest. So I think there's obviously different circumstances at play here. It doesn't seem like Sam's going to go anywhere. He's still going to be based in Tauranga. So, yeah, hey, all the best to the guys. Congratulations to Sam. They've obviously got the means through NIL or full disclosure. I've got no idea on the contractual situation with Nike and what's going on, but it must be a good situation that he's able to do this and chasing after that LA standard in the world ranking points, I think is probably a reasonably smart tactic. But yeah, just hope that he can maintain that balance that's made him so successful so far.
And just in defense, because I don't know anyone openly attacking it, but in defense of the decision, or in support, I should say, of the decision, you're a 348 miler. You're trying to go to the world champs, the Com Games, the Olympics. You know the way the world is these days, you can't begrudge someone, even if they are that age, the time and the ability to recover, to actually prepare like it's a really serious endeavor, because it is. How many kids come along that as good as him? No one in history has been that fast at that age over the mile, including Jakob. So it's like, you're not talking about little Tommy Smith who ran 4:03 in the 7th form and showed a bit of promise, and he might get a scholarship at a middling US university here. We're talking about a guy who could be one of the great milers in history. So, yeah, just whatever. I wasn't that surprised, to be honest.
Shano, one question came in from the mailbag. Swanee.
The mailbag. Swanee.
Super fan Swanee was over in Berlin. He sent a picture from the steps of Olympic Stadium, the Olympiastadion in Berlin. He wanted to go in and maybe check out the wall there that has all the winners of the Olympic Games from 1936. Of course, Jack Lovelock is on that list. He couldn't get in, unfortunately for Swanee. So he was stuck with a photo outside, sent it through. But I did ask him, I was like, Swanee, as one of our champion mailbag and trivia buffs, give us a question related to the Berlin Olympic Stadium. And he's got one for us, Shano. And I've obviously got the question. I do not know the answer, so let's see how close we can get to this one. Swanee said, or this was his question, guys, do you know the difference between the men's winning times in the 10K at the 1936 Olympics and the 2009 World Championships? What do you think, Shane Rody? Come on, let's use our
so just
powers
1 second. So Bekele,
yes,
I know Bekele won the 2009. I know he won the 5K.
yes,
didn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he won the 5.
He out sprinted Leggett. Did he win the 10? If he ran the 5, he must have run the 10.
Yeah, I think he did win. I think he did win the 10. It was the last of his double. So the question is, let's see if we can find a starting point. Do you have any idea what he may have run for the 10K there? Was it? I don't feel like it was under 28.
It might have been slower. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a feeling it could be like a low 28 time, because remember, we're sort of a bit spoiled now with faster times in major championships. That 5K was incredibly slow at that World Championships, which is why it was almost a bit of a surprise that he was able to win. But what do you reckon? I've got like a 28.
It was slow, and I think like Mr. Silver Saheen gave him a real rev up, and he smoked him in the last like 100.
Yeah.
I think, but he was ahead of him. That might have been that race. I think it was 09.
So what do you think?
Say it was 28.
Yeah, 28.10. Okay. So
now 28.05. I like 28.05.
All right. So now the question is, what do we think that the 1936 Olympic 10,000 meters was won in?
It would have been hopeless, because Zetterpick, I remember reading about Zetterpick as a younger guy training in his army boots and everything, and then reading his times and, going down to like the local sort of east to Oiraka, and Robbie Johnson running like a minute quicker. And no disrespect to Robbie, massive fan of the podcast and Olympian, but this is Emil Zetterpick we're talking about. Robbie would have smoked him. I don't know. It would have been hopeless. It would have been like 31 minutes or something. I don't know.
It's got to be faster than 31, but I don't know if it's under.
Zetterpick was what? When was Zetterpick? It was like
28, 48 or something, was he? Oh, you mean like his era?
When was his era?
50s.
50s. This is 20 years before that.
I know.
These guys sucked.
And it was Olympic, so it could have been, it wasn't like a time trial race.
Yeah. I'm going with 31 minutes.
Okay. So 31 minutes.
I have no idea.
Well, you make your prediction. You said 28.10.
I'll go 30.48.
30.48. And what do you think the 5?
28.06.
28.06. Okay, so that means we've got Shane Rody 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Yeah, I think, okay, I'll go 28.05 for Bekele, but I'm a little, I think I'll go closer to 30 minutes than you.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go even 30 minutes. So why not? So that gives me 1 minute and I don't know. I think I'm closer. Anyway, should we find this out, Shano?
I haven't looked it up, but I just think he's asked it because I think it will be a total blowout. It wouldn't even be.
Yeah, it could be. I did think
it's the sort of thing you'd go, oh, this is incredible how different it is. It's not going to be like a minute.
Okay. Well, all right. So Shano, I've got the 10.
Bekele first.
Mate, what do which one first?
Bekele.
We were way off the mark. Shane, that was the year that Kinesese Bekele, this is hilarious. He actually ran the championship record for the 10,000 meters at the World Champs, 26:46.3. Okay, and now let's find.
So we're off to a bad start.
I know, we're off to a bad start here. Okay, the winner of the men's 10,000 at the 1936 Olympics, August the 2nd, the Finnish runners, good shout out to the Finns. Ilmari Salmanen won the gold medal in 30:15. So there we go.
Okay. You won.
I think I did, yes, based on the fact that we were both incredibly far off. But 30:15, wow. So 3 minutes and 20 seconds was the difference between the 10,000 meters run at the Olympic Games in 1936 and 2009. Crazy. Goodness me. My God, how times have changed. There we go.
Swanee 1, Track Stitch 0.
Yeah, good stuff, Swanee. I mean,
Swanee.
I don't think he knew that one off the top of his head, though. Shano.
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Shano, a few minutes left. Probably we've got time for the new favorite segment as voted on by the 95 subscribers. By the way, Shane, we increased our subscriber count by 1 from last week. So we really are Rahul Draviding through the 90s here. We're walling through. A little bit disappointing. I thought the fans
fractions, might. Was it just whole numbers?
I don't know. Yeah. I would have thought maybe Jeff Shaw or Sammy Maloney or Kramer might have recruited a few more numbers for us to get us.
None of those guys probably have a lot of mates.
That's true.
For a start, that are into track. So
I just don't think they've got a lot of mates to begin with.
Neither do we. That's why it's tough to grow.
Shano, it is now officially time for Athlete's Court. And today, I will pose you 2 athletes. You are able to choose between one of them to make your case, or is it the other way around? Does it matter?
Don't think it matters.
Okay, doesn't matter. All right, Shano, we're going to prove our worth. We are very much distanced focus on the Track Stitch podcast, but we've mentioned one of these athletes already, so we do know a little bit about him. Shano, today on the Athlete's Court, we are going with Carl Lewis or Usain Bolt. Now, this is not just for sprinting prowess, even though obviously two of those guys, these 2 guys are 2 of the greatest sprinters of all time, but this is overall greatness in the sport of track and field. Shane, you get to pick. Do you want to make the case for Carl Lewis or for Usain Bolt?
Oh, I'm so uninspired by both those athletes. I'll go Carl Lewis.
Come on. All right.
It's from the.
You would be uninspired by Usain Bolt and Carl Lewis.
Track Stitch is from the heart.
Well, sometimes we've got to challenge and extend ourselves. We can't just.
That's the thing we don't, Jason, because we don't have any sponsors and we have a very small following. And it's like sitting. I like to think of it as sitting in when you were back over late last year, which is fabulous. Sitting up at Tiare or sitting in the garden of my place and just talking from the heart.
Well, I would ask you from the heart. Who's greater, Carl Lewis or Usain Bolt? Well, anyway, you're making the case for Carl Lewis. Go.
I'll make the case for Carl Lewis.
Do it. Oh, you don't even want to do it, do you? Well, if you've got 2 guys that are better, then
no. I just don't have the passion, Jason. I know all the stats. Carl Lewis won a lot of sprint medals. He was heavily implicated in drug scandals in the 80s. He won the long jump against Mike Powell. I suppose that was exciting. Usain's the fastest man of all time. He ran 9:58. He captivated audiences at 3 straight Olympic
salty
games.
about it. Look at you. You're sulking.
It's tough. It's tough.
All right. You didn't make any case in. You just, all right. That's a flame out. I thought that was going to be exciting. I thought we could prove our worth with the sprint here, but all right. Okay. Have you got 2 guys?
Yeah, I've got 2 guys.
All right, go. You do yours then. God, you blew it. Blew up the spot again.
Nah, it's just you gotta be. We're probably not going to catch fire in the mainstream, Jason, but at least we're from the heart. And there'll be a few guys out there. Right. I remember back in the day the sort of tension between the sprinters and the distance guys. I'm not going to pour my heart into
Donald McDonald, Dallas Roberts versus Stu Kerr and Robbie Johnson. All right, go on then. Fine.
Okay. This is a good one for you, Jason.
Okay.
Bernard Lagat and Matthew Centrovitz.
Okay. Man. Yeah. I'll try and make the case for Matthew Centrovitz. Okay, all right. Shane, Matthew Centrovitz, by hook or by crook, it does not matter if it was the slowest Olympic 1500 meter final in recent modern history. He won it. And I think that Centro is beyond just the tires. He didn't run extremely fast. He never broke 3:30 for 1,500 meters, but he was the Olympic champion. He was also a 2-time world medalist in a very difficult era because he was running against the likes of Asbel Kiprop, who got himself in trouble. He still holds those titles. It was kind of like this pre, super shoe, bicarb, wave light era. So I find it difficult to read too much into the times of Centro. But one thing I will say about him is he was and is still one of the great tacticians in world 1,500 meter running. And I think he was a better tactician than Bernard Lagat. Because if Lagat was a better tactician, he may have been able to knock off El Garouge on a few of those occasions, especially that 04 race. But I think Bernard made a few small mistakes that if he hadn't made, he may have been able to pip LG. Centro was also a world indoor 1,500 meter champion. I know this is difficult because Bernard Lagat is a great runner, but I got to make the case for Centro. We talk about this a lot, that at the end of the day, this sport is about stepping up on the biggest stage and the biggest moment and getting it done. And the reality is that he was able to do it. I think that 1,500 meter win in 2016 is massively overrated. I think people look a little bit down on it because the time was not so great.
You mean underrated?
Sorry, I think it was underrated. The performance.
Overrated.
Oh, did I say that? Sorry. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was massively underrated because the performance was a little bit slower. And at the end of the day, I think that despite the times, despite maybe, and I guess we're only talking over the 1,500 meter discipline here because obviously Bernard Lagat was very good over 5K. I think that Matthew Centrovitz as a 1,500 meter runner in Morla was greater than Bernard Lagat.
Matthew Centrovitz is the Olympic champion, an Olympic champion in the men's 1,500, and no one can nor should ever take that away from him. He also won 2 world champs medals, silver and bronze, a 4th in the Olympics in 2012. He had the prototypical milers, like the success journey of the miler. He ticked off all the milestones at NCAA. He went into the world champs, got medals, 4th at the Olympics, which was probably the making of him, getting that left off the dais. But no disrespect to our own great Nick Willis and Tawafik McCluffy. He didn't beat the greatest, the GOAT, Hisham El Garouge. He didn't get third. He got third to the GOAT, Hisham El Garouge, and Noah Nien, a 2:11.96 man, the second fastest miler in that mythical mile world record of El Garouge's, and when he chased him all the way after being the pacemaker the year before. Lagat was the next on the throne in terms of the great Kenyan milers to come through. He was a 3:26.3 man, still the second fastest in history over 1,500 meters. He caught an El Garouge who had learned through the pain and anguish of many years of failing to win the Olympic 1,500 title on a day where El Garouge had finally figured out that ditching the paces and manning up and being responsible for his own tactics and results would be the pathway to finally winning the Olympic crown, putting the feather in his cap. But for Hisham El Garouge, Bernard Lagat would have been an Olympic champion. He was streets ahead of his peers, as we saw when Hisham retired, and Lagat was utterly superb in the 2007 World Champs, where he stormed away and won the 1,500, a rare 1,500 5K double. I'll give it to you. Centrovitz is an Olympic champion. Bernard Lagat is not. So I struggle to, with a straight face, make an argument that Bernard Lagat was a greater miler than Matthew Centrovitz. However, deep down, I feel when I think of those two names, Bernard Lagat and Matt Centrovitz, I feel that Bernard Lagat was a greater runner than Matt Centrovitz. Just a better runner overall.
I mean,
that's no disrespect to Matt Centrovitz because he beat everyone he could on that day, and it's unfair to say to him that, but if this guy was here and that guy wasn't there. But my gut still tells me Bernard Lagat was I saw Bernard Lagat run in 2001 Sydney, and Hisham beat him that day. I just think he wasn't quite strong enough to beat Hisham. He just you said tactics, but I don't think tactics were too bad. He's pretty good at getting in the slipstream.
I was clutching at straws.
I know, that's okay, but coming off the shoulder pretty well. I think he did everything pretty expertly, as you saw in 07 when Algarouge had gone, and that 15 and that 5, he just nailed it in terms of how to come off that shoulder, sit in the pocket, not expend too much energy. A pretty phenomenal athlete, Bernard Lagat.
Shane, I had to try some tactics on the stand.
Oh, you did well
to support Centro.
I
didn't really have too much else because this is I feel like I took the more challenging angle, because Bernard Lagat obviously is one of the greatest middle distance runners of all time. Not very many men in history have ever done the 1500 5K double. I think only 3 in history. One of them is Hisham Algarouge. That was at Olympic level. Bernard at the World Championships level, and maybe it was Paavo Nurmi all the way back in the black and white days did it. So it's tough, and as so often happens, we end up talking up each other's case. You gave Centro some props for me, and I'll give some props back. I agree with you. I think Bernard Lagat, he was the key adversary of LG in that second part of his career. He's arguably LG's greatest adversary, right? I think we could say that. I don't think no one is, because Bernard was there, obviously, for that incredibly fast race in 2001 where maybe the world record was set or not. And, of course, the legendary 04 final.
Yep. But here's a question for you. Who's a greater athlete, Bernard Lagat or Carl Lewis?
Carl Lewis.
It was a joke.
Shane, we didn't even... Carl Lewis, by the way, 3 consecutive world 100-meter golds. Shane, back-to-back Olympic champion in the 100 meters, 4 long jump gold medals at the Olympic Games, including a win in the greatest athletic competition, as voted on by the fans. Not really. We just did that back on our World Championship special.
I tell you my struggle with that, and it's not even not wanting to answer. I can't do it justice, Jason. I know the facts, but I'll have no panache. It would be your sort of teleprompter, sort of standard media outlet. Wow, Carl Lewis won 3 consecutive world 100-meter titles. He won the long jump in a famous battle against Mike Powell. And then, but Usain Bolt, however, was on a completely different level. He captured the hearts and minds of a generation that had lost interest in track and field. And for that reason,
like John Macbeth.
Exactly. That's not what I don't want to do.
Do you want to sound more like Mark Watson?
No, I want to sound like me. And, a track nerd who loves middle distances. And there's something like a fire lights in you when you want to compare a Gat to a Centrovitz. So
fine, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound like I was. How would I put it? Having a tanty
of Carl Lewis and Usain Bolt.
It's not why I'm here.
The fans will speak, Shane.
Well, they'll vote with their feet.
No, it was a good one. Lagat and Centro. I mean, I'll tell you what, Shadow. I don't know why I was thinking about this.
That might have been my first fire-up corner without you caught me out.
Oh, Kerr. Let's get him on. He'll decide. King of the fire.
He'll love it.
Shano, one performance that I will always remember quite fondly with Centro. By the way, just speaking about that, this is sort of not it pertains to the topic, but I'll never forget when he went for. One thing I will say with Centro, he had that hubris and that braggadociousness about him, kind of that aura. But one thing I'll say, one of the most impressive performances that I ever saw from Centro was when he went after, I believe it was 2020, 2021. It was definitely towards the end of his career. Of course, as we mentioned, he'd never really run that fast over either the 1500 meters or the mile, especially not when you look at the level that the guys are running now, even though he was an unbelievable tactician, great winner. He could get it done when it really mattered. He was also NCAA champion, by the way, two-time? Either way. But when he went for that American mile record and he announced that he was going to go after it, and the time was, of course, it wasn't Nagusa's 3:43 at the time. It was Alan Webb's. And by the way, the anniversary of that was just a couple of days ago, I believe. 3:46 point. Ooh. can't remember what it was. It was under 3:47 anyway. An amazing time. But do you remember when Centro announced that he was going to go after? And it was like at the Jesuit high school here in Portland, and they set up those guys. And I remember that night in Portland, it was kind of windy. They kept pushing back the start time. And now he did have wave light, but they got him 2 pacemakers. One of them was this German dude, Amos Bartelsmeyer, who did one of the worst pacing jobs for like a guy who was like a mid 335 guy. He couldn't even pull him through very far on pace. It was shocking. And Centro was just out there by himself, just chugging away. And he ended up running a mile PR, I believe. He ran 3:49.08. And I just thought at that time, I'm like, okay, it's not the American record. It's not one of the fastest times ever run, but shit, I was impressed with that, with Centro. For a guy who really responded extremely well to racing and competition, to go out there and put himself out there, to publicly announce that he was going for an American mile record, and then to never give up that whole way. I thought that was one of the most covertly impressive performances of Centro's career. I thought that was just awesome. Little footnote there. I know that doesn't really
a couple of other little
sway
footnotes
the argument, but yeah.
Just to make up for my lack of passion on the sprint comparison, I love this stuff. So I remember watching Centro in 2012, watching our own Nick Willis. I thought maybe Nick could win that race, and I still think possibly, maybe not with McLuffy in the shape he was in, but should have medaled, and he knows that. I remember watching Centro in the semis, just looking so. I don't know. He was also really gutted by that because he got third in the, in 2011 World Champs.
Right.
He just was running 3 or 4 wide, and like with 600 to go with 250 to go in the semi, and he just looked so imperious. He's one of those great. I think that's why he won that Olympic title. Bearing in mind that McLuffy got second to Rudisha in the 800 and 142.6. And anyone that wants to talk about the time of that is just, I'm sorry, but it's just, it'd be better off, on the cast of Dinner for Schmucks, because it's just not it's irrelevant. Those guys are all so far under their threshold running anything outside like 330 pace that doesn't matter. He headed off a guy who'd run 142.6 and silver medalist in the 800. And Nick, was right there sprinting with those guys, and you had the guy from Suleiman, Suleiman, who was a 140. Suleiman ran 142 as well, 328 or 329, like sprinting there with them. That was totally elite from those guys. But seeing Centro in that 2012 semi, the way he just glided kind of wide and ran in his own space, and he barely moves his torso or his body. He's just so relaxed at that sort of 50, 51, 52 sort of finishing speed. Right. He was just an awesome athlete to watch. I always enjoyed watching Centro. And I think he has because of that hubris and that weird cultural sort of encouragement for people to sort of have that, but then to knock them down because it's a weird thing, It's like, how do you acquit yourself in this world now where you are supposed to, push off the naysayers and get somewhere with your life. But as soon as you have a bit of sort of like that cocksure vibe that Centro, people are sort of hating on them. I don't think he really cares or should care about that. He was a legend in my mind.
No, for sure. Yeah. But again, tough to go past Bernard Legat. Definitely.
Well, because Legat had to beat Hisham. I don't think anyone could have. We've said that. Maybe more Salih at his peak.
Yeah, but exactly. Or maybe we'll do that one of these days. Wink, wink.
Maybe we will.
All right, Shano, that's enough for Athletes Court. We'll get you out of here on King's birthday weekend. You got any plans? It's a bit colder there now.
Yeah, might actually go and get the VHS out, Jason, and watch some old Carl Lewis, Leroy Burrell races. Yeah, be good.
You should.
I will.
You should start getting fired up and juiced up about the sprints, my friend. When are we going to do who are the great New Zealand sprinters of when are we going to do a Lord Kojo versus Gus Nikisha?
I tell you what, I might get held in contempt of Athletes Court.
That's true.
Yeah.
For that,
take it away. Bailiffs, take him away in the jumpsuit. Yeah,
get him out of here.
Take it out of my own law firm. Contempt of Athletes Court.
All right, Deo, great podcast. Tons of topics covered, as always, on the number one track and field podcast for women aged 69 to 75. Shane, enjoy the long weekend, and I think we'll be able to do this one next week. You around?
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right, mate. Enjoy the rest
Take it
of the
easy.
weekend, and we'll catch you later. Peace.
See you, mate.